Well, I think it's the trick that we've now got to pull, isn't it? Is that we've got the big investors coming onto the Freeport, and that's great news, and we will bring more on. I think the thing that we've got to make sure is that our local supply chains are included, and that they're up to it, up to the challenge. And we've certainly got some experience of that when the Hitachi factory came into Newton Aycliffe. There was quite a challenge to the supply chain to meet Hitachi's standards and to meet their requirements, and there's no reason why our supply chain can't do that. But I think there's got to be a good dialogue, and we've got some fantastic companies in the Tees Valley and the wider area who really should benefit from what's happening in the Freeport, if that they can be linked up with companies like GE very very early on, and we can make sure that we recycle a lot of money into the northeast supply chain. So what I would say is, we've certainly got we've got our sectors identified, with certainly chemicals, and we've got a well-established supply chain there. But the new turbine technologies, that's a new one for the Tees Valley. We've got NAREC, of course, and the research up at Blythe. But it's something that the northeast is going to have to look at. It's that move away from oil and gas and into those new technologies, that new type of engineering, and we've got to make sure that we support the supply chain to do that, and then they will absolutely benefit. So yep, anyone who's working in the energy sector, the advanced manufacturing sector, engineering, those are the companies that we really need to make sure are in the supply chains in the area.
Kick off. I mean, the Freeport is a massive opportunity for business across the board, and full credit to Ben and his team and the local partners that have executed that. And I guess us being a STEM business, so we're very active in the STEM sectors, we know obviously the businesses that are on the ground in the Freeport, but also those companies that are likely to look to move in nationally and internationally. So it's very exciting. Clearly, the companies that are in there at the moment in the Freeport, they're doing very well, gearing up for everything that's due to happen. The ports, the engineering companies, logistics, all the professional services work, the architects, everything that's going on in the background, getting ready for everything that is yet to come. But the impact of securing big corporates like GE is not to be underestimated. They have this kind of magnetic pull for pulling in other big names and other businesses that could be quite dynamic SMEs down the line. It could be other corporates. Clearly, we're hoping to see those offshore wind companies, the wider chemical process, the advanced manufacturing companies that will follow. And I guess those conversations are starting to happen. It's interesting, given where we operate in the market, we're already in touch with clients that are considering the Freeport as a potential for down the line, and even our private equity friends that are looking at the Freeport as a serious hub for investment. Could it be the type of place that you could put tech investment? Could it be the type of place where you could have manufacturing, but then start to bring quite sticky R&D jobs? But the rippling out of the supply chain is amazing once you get these bigger companies in. And the ripple happens, yes, you bring in the engineering, manufacturing, the process, the offshore wind, but what about all the other things that follow? Who does the accountancy? Who does the finance? Who does the IT? Who does the marketing? Who does the PR? And that's where the supply chain grows, not just on the Tees Valley, but you'll find it'll be people nationally and even beyond that start to get more actively involved. And then that ripples all the way through, even to the accommodation providers, and even dare say it, who's providing the lunches, to the guys that are working in the factory. So it goes right the way through the supply chain.
Well, picking up on the points that both Richard and Rachel have said, I think it's across all industries, and that's what's so beautiful about what's happened at the moment in terms of looking at what Ben's achieved, and also the Treasury coming to Darlington. It's put Tees Valley on the map. It's put the towns and cities of Tees Valley on the map. And I know from my own experience, as somebody who looks after the whole of the Northeast for Deloitte, the movers and shakers who happen to be in London, as is so often the case, have certainly sat up and taken notice of Tees Valley now. So I think it's something we can explore on the call, but I think it's the whole supply chain. And picking up Richard's point, it's the people who feed us, the people who do the professional services, the marketeers. There's jobs for everybody. And it doesn't necessarily just have to be local businesses. It's encouraging more national businesses to have footprint in the Northeast as well.
The partners who kind of get that and understand that they can share information with us as a combined authority that we can keep confidential in a commercially sensitive way, that again is very difficult to square that circle in other areas of the country. So I think we've been able to accelerate through some of the difficulties that other areas are having, which means we can concentrate on the real nuts and bolts of this thing, which is how do you operationalize it? How do you get the thing up and running as quickly as possible? And then how do we all concentrate on attracting the new investors when, you know, one of the things that we know is there are a couple of investors who are looking at bringing their UK investment to other sites in the UK. Because of the Freeport, they're now considering Teesside more seriously than they were before because of the financial benefits. Well, how do we all come together to show the other benefits as well as the financial ones of bringing it here? Now, you know, if I just speak from, you know, with my other hat on from the Development Corporation point of view, you know, there are investors that want to come here, but they want to speak to the Harbour Authority because obviously you can't really move anything through the river without the Harbour Authority. There are other investors who are approaching us that are interested in the Wilton International site because the businesses are located there and more coterminous with what they want to do. So how do we link up with Andy Koss and the team at Sembcorp and Wilton International to make it happen? So one of the things that I'm really proud of is actually we work really well together in this region. And
I mean, one of the challenges we've got on Teesside is that we've got so much to offer. We've got multiple parks and sites where businesses could move into, and we've got so many different terminals, for example, where goods can be moved in and out of Teesside, and lots of different suppliers. So we've got it. The idea is the balance between putting our best foot forward so that we truly show Teesside off in its best light to international inward investors who see the UK, and then sort of as a whole, we need to make sure that Teesside is shining the brightest. And there will be conflicts of interest around those. It's how you manage those. And I think avoiding if you go back to the old days of the regional development agencies where there was fighting between trying to get it in the northwest or the northeast. We just want to get it on Teesside initially, and then land it on Teesside, but balance that so that they do come to the right place within the region. So it's collaboration as to where we think is best for the region, and to manage those selfish interests. Everyone's got selfish interests. Everyone would like to be working with the new inward investors. We need to agree the best way forward so that we're landing them first and then sorting out the high quality problems of who's best placed to support them.
Well, Lester, I'm happy to just make a comment on that. I think given my experience in the construction industry in the past, the best success comes from collaboration and partnership, working together, but it's a principle of understanding each other's processes fully, so that those processes can be speeded up. I think one of the key issues here on this site will be frustration in speed of development. I think that's already happening. So it's a case of understanding those processes from both sides and working together successfully.
One point, just adding that, coming back on there, Alistair, I think we've got so much on Teesside that people actually, we don't know, do an awful lot of work with NEPIC on the chemical side, but you've got individual businesses in the same sector who don't really know what's going on just across their fence. So I think we absolutely need to find the best way to pool everything we've got. And you know, the team at the Combined Authority have got a lot of information, but no one's got all of it. So we need to find the best way to A, pool all that information, then B, represent it so that everyone sees all of the strengths we've got.
Yeah, Alistair, if I might just jump in on the direct question that you're asking. Clearly, this is an enormous opportunity for the Tees Valley. It's one that a lot of people have been working on for a number of years now. We've repeatedly made the point this is not a silver bullet. It needs to be delivered. Comments has already been made by Ben with regard to the operational credibility of the delivery of the Freeport opportunity. And we must not underestimate this. We must certainly not overestimate it. But this is a very complex and very challenging opportunity to make sure that it is working correctly and appropriately. If we do not do so, then the credibility of the business model gets undermined. So the operational challenges are ones that we need to meet head on. The other area that we need to meet head on is the governance issue in terms of the Freeport, because as already been alluded to, there are a number of interests here involved in the development of the Freeport opportunity. And we need to make sure that that is balanced. And we need to ensure that there is an independence of scrutiny and governance over the Freeport by, in my opinion, highly professional individuals who have a very, very clear understanding of business, the way that we can commercially market and develop the opportunity, secure contracts, negotiate them, and bring them to fruition on Teesside. Because at the end of the day, this is not about any individual or any business's parochial self-interest. The reason that governments have been so keen on promoting the Freeport opportunities is part of the strategic initiative, which is about levelling up this fairly acute north-south divide. And our combined authority, and Ben in particular, have done a great job in terms of getting Teesside in particular on the map. Full credit for the work that has been done here. But we need to remember that what Freeport's is about is levelling up the north-south divide and creating jobs, creating opportunities, creating wealth in the local economy. And therefore, we need to get the operation right. We need to get the governance structures right in order that we max out and optimise this tremendous opportunity that sits before us.
The Freeport work is the private sector, because you've got the expertise, you've got people with the specific credentials to be able to deliver on what their business model is. And that's, we've got, you know, we're very fortunate in the Tees Valley to have a very wide breadth of people involved in the Freeport that bring their own expertise that are going to make this work. The other side of the coin, though, and I think Richard alluded to this at the beginning, and it's something that often confuses the people about Freeports generally, especially this new UK Freeport model, is that for the first time, it's actually concentrating on certain deregulation around planning, etc., which to some extent doesn't really impact the Tees Valley that much because of the very positive way in which the local authority processes its planning applications. I mean, just an example, we've already had 4.5 million square feet of planning approved on delegated decisions within 10 weeks of the application going in. We're going to get plenty more of that. So we're less bothered about that side. But often people get really kind of wound up and tightly strung when they speak to me, especially on people like social media, about customs and customs processing. Well, the one thing that these Freeports are more interested in are the tax zones. And I'll be honest, I would say pretty much every investor I've spoken to is only really interested in the tax zones because that's where the financial benefit comes. And if you take, I suppose, PD Ports out of the picture and Able, Seaton Port, and to probably a lesser extent Womble, although I'm not entirely sure, you know, ports themselves run simplified customs procedures already. And when we went through this process, even before the government announced it, there was a big question mark as to whether, you know, the customs changes, do they really benefit anybody? They're going to really make any difference when ports can kind of already have that in place at the moment. And what we're finding is that's true. And if you look at the government's and the Treasury's analysis, they don't think necessarily that the customs zones are going to increase any value add to the local economy or the national economy. They kind of see that as a zero-sum game because it's a simplified process that could be used anyway. It's the tax zones.
About sort of, I think we've talked about momentum, and I agree completely with Ben. When we talk to people about what does the Freeport mean, the thing that people get are the tax benefits. So the fact that there are enhanced capital allowances, business rate waivers, national insurance holidays, I think that's the thing that really stimulates the private businesses and potential investors that we're looking at, because they can see that flow directly through to their financial returns, and it helps them to make a decision. But and so I completely agree with Ben. I think the other important point, though, is that these tax benefits last 5 years. And I think what we're talking about is the momentum. How do we show the change? It's a fantastic opportunity for us, but and the GE announcement is great because almost immediately we've got sort of tangible proof of the Freeport working. We need to keep on with that momentum. And I believe that taking advantage of these tax sites, bringing in investors, building out the supply chains behind that is really going to drive the momentum behind making the Freeport a success.
Just how attractive the tax incentives will be to inward investors, but they last for 5 years, and it is all around the momentum that builds in the area from the sort of virtuous circle of the investment initially attracting other businesses. So I'd just echo though that the tax benefits are incredibly attractive to investors.
Yes, thanks, Alistair. I mean, we're the construction voice on this panel, I guess. And notwithstanding Ben's point about the ability of supply chains to scale up for this opportunity, I think, certainly from my perspective, the North East has and the Tees Valley particularly has an abundance of capable organisations, that are indigenous to the region and actually have the talent needed to support the construction works. I think what's really important is that these businesses appear firmly on the radar of procurement bodies when they're looking to tender the works. And often these large scale kind of flagship construction projects default to kind of procurement routes that favour the national or even the international contractors, and actually overlook the breadth and capability of our smaller regional players. And we're kind of a bit of an enigma in that we're a large local contractor. Obviously we profess to have the relevant skill sets and the capacity and scale to play a big part in this. But these regional businesses do have a very strong supply chain to support them. They're invested heavily in the region. They employ locally, which is really important, and of course they spend locally. So as we said earlier, they'll spend a lot of money with local designers, engineers, architects, and of course that will attract further investment from those kinds of organisations as these businesses spend a large amount of their inbound income on those kind of local services and support the entire construction cycle. So I suppose the answer is yes, but it's important that we ensure that choices made at the procurement stage give these organisations a fair crack of the whip.
I think that's a really, really important point, and it's where the key benefit of all this spins out is into providing employment for this generation and the next generation, and putting the money in people's pockets to spend here. I think one of the key features of the Freeport and the bid from the Tees is having the Skills Academy that is absolutely part of the bid and will be run by a consortium including the local colleges, and that means that the industry that's on the Freeport and surrounding the Freeport are very in touch with the local providers and in touch with that route to the young people, to people changing careers, and make sure that those skills are relevant. And there is a really good pipeline of individuals. I think we do have a challenge ahead of us in that there are a lot of people who, coming out of pandemic and coming out of the downturn in some sectors that the pandemic has caused, we've got a challenge around retraining. There'll be people who are looking to move sectors, and actually if we can capture them and make them ready for these new jobs, that's going to be a real bonus. The problem we're going to have is around timing, is that what we can't have is a lot of people coming out of college fully qualified and not necessarily having the jobs ready for them to go into, because we'll lose them to other areas, and that's really what we don't want to do. So I think there is a conversation to be had and a job of work to be had around how we can maybe pool some employers together to train a cohort, and in very much the way that the old ICI used to do with training apprentices and training for skills, and I know certainly in the construction sector that's been something that has happened as well. If we can do that, then it means that we can really retain the skills on Teesside, and make sure that we use our local providers. There's a really good route through as well to careers advice. That's going to be absolutely crucial. These are very new jobs in sometimes new and very cutting edge technology. If you look at something like the Net Zero project, this is technology that's not been used before. It's something that the general public probably aren't that aware of, and to be advising young people to go into and what those opportunities are ahead. We've got to make sure that that plays into careers in schools, and that teachers are aware, careers advisors are aware, so that we get young people making the right decisions, and those coming out of university as well. The universities in the region have got a role to play in this, in making sure that those costs are there.
Can I, if I can add to that, Alistair, I just wanted to say one of the key premises of the Freeport was actually driving a low carbon economy. And we've touched on that a little bit with offshore wind, and Rachel mentioned net zero. I think Teesside, again, has a fantastic role to play at the centre of the low carbon economy in the future. And if you look at carbon capture and storage, if you look at low carbon hydrogen, industrial decarbonisation, there are some fantastic opportunities. And I think it is all about making sure that we are training people for those future jobs. And I think it is incumbent on private employers like Sembcorp, but others, to get together and say, what are the skills we need to run hydrogen CCS facilities in the future? And making sure through schools, through colleges, retraining, we're making sure that those jobs are available and that there are people in the region that can fill them. So again, I mean, Freeport enables that, but I think also everything going on around the net zero transition, Teesside is very well placed to take advantage of that.
Alistair, could I also add that the sort of projects that are being mentioned at Teesport and in the Freeport are high profile, and those projects are very attractive to us as a company, but also to highly skilled individuals who are elsewhere in the country, and it makes attracting them.
As of today, we do not have the skills in place to fill the jobs that are coming, and not even close, right? So forget GE, forget net zero, forget offshore wind. If you look at just the construction phase of NZT, they're saying they need 5,000 construction workers by peak construction at the back end of 2023, beginning of 2024. We just don't have those 5,000 construction workers, full stop. That's just one project. Never mind the fact that the construction of the GE shed, starting in October, needs another 800 direct construction workers, never mind the other 1,500 in the supply chain, just on construction. So you could find that together, all right, you might not quite be at peak construction for NZT, but you could be looking at between 6,000 and 7,000 construction workers needed on 2 projects at the same time. So at this moment in time, Richard's right. It's a great problem to have. And you're right, the industry is going to have to respond to that come what may. But from my point of view, which is a very narrow point and very parochial point of view, I want as many of those jobs to go to local people as possible. I mean, we can find 7,000 construction jobs, right? Andy or Richard or Jerry or anybody can go and build a shed, and we can get labour from all over the place, get a load of labour agencies in, and we can just fill those 7,000 jobs. But this project is so much more than that. And it's so much more than that because it's about helping deprived and areas of social deprivation. It's about areas that have been left behind for a long time. It's the whole levelling up thing. I mean, Teesside is the perfect example of that in action. And the counter to that is, and I completely agree with Andy Koss on this, it's about momentum. And one of the things that can really stop momentum is the perception of investors of how investor-friendly an area is. Now, I think we've dealt with that, a specific example on Teesside around the power plant that is being built in Teesside. A lot of that was outsourced to labour agencies. The organisation that invested the money felt like they lost control and sight of who they were bringing in to do that work. Rightly or wrongly, there was a perception that local people were not being prioritised or given a fair shot when compared to other workers from around the country or even internationally. And that has caused, wildcat strikes and some quite high profile things that, if you're looking from an investor point of view, can be quite damaging when investors don't want to deal with that type of thing. And so investor relations isn't just about, everything that we want to see about making sure that local people have more money in their pockets, look after themselves and their families, and raising up areas of social deprivation. Actually, it's a really important thing for future investment. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it? If you're welcoming investors and those investors are really buying into the local population and are helping to skill them, that's going to attract more investment because the local population are going to be even more enthused by investment. So the other side, the third side of the coin, is that the private sector also now needs to step up as well. So we talk about